Thank you.
Mayor, may I respond to Julie's question too? Julie, this is Simper's question. The only thing that's going to change the budget for the Parks and Recs would be an increase in income taxes. Doesn't have to be a rate. Bring some new business in, and your income tax collections go up. Parks and Recs, I think it's a small percentage of income tax collections. That's it. You could do that by, you could introduce legislation so that maybe Parks and Rec's percentage of the income tax allocations would be more than what it is. I believe it might be around 1.5%. But then you got to take that away from someone else. And the three funds that get it are Parks and Recs, streets, which is also negative, and the general fund, which is also negative.
I wasn't necessarily asking for an increase. I was asking if they will have more responsibility on the budget they have now. Because, like, are they responsible for anything with this dam? The park is there now, it's all going to be one piece, so we can get grants and stuff. And are they going to be responsible for anything on that? You know, is what I was asking.
Ultimately, Parks would be responsible for maintenance. That's where I would put the costs. That's so determined by council, wherever they are. They have to be appropriated first. And I think they're going to apply for some grants, have some funding made available, and I would introduce a budget at that time. And that's how, that's probably how to proceed. There's more than one way to proceed.
But that's an accounting issue.
That's the county.
Let me see if Mr. Granchi or Ms. Blitzer, if you have anything here, did you want to set the address, Mr. Forey?
Yeah, I have a couple of things.
Yeah, go ahead.
This dam just didn't pop up overnight. This is back from 2015, 2016. It's a previous administration. Well, I got to say something. They just didn't do anything about it. Now we had an inspection again. There are some very serious 1,000-pound pressure going against some of the holes, which could eventually blow it out. We're going to have to do something. We're trying to deal with problems that are, probably should have been taken up before. I'm not trying to dump nothing on anybody, but we're trying to address them now. This just isn't new that we came up with something. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I will say that the reason that I'm proposing this was because, as Mr. Brian had said, I'm just looking for additional opportunities for funding to help alleviate the city's responsibility for these dams. Now that we have grant writing services available to us, I'm hoping that these being part of the parks will also open up the opportunities to get, the additional funding.
Okay, if no other discussion, whenever the clerk is ready to call for the roll.
Mr. Granchi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sniffer?
Yes.
Mr. Federoff?
Yes.
Mr. Mariak?
Yes.
Mrs. Blitzer?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance passes. Okay, under new business, Resolution 37-2022, and I'll read the entirety. It says, whereas Mr. Michael Harnacher has retired as a long-time dedicated employee of the Newton Falls Street Department on May 22nd, 2022, after 33 3/4 years of service to Newton Falls, and whereas the village and its citizens wish to congratulate Mr. Harnacher on his retirement and thank him for his service to the community. Now therefore, Mayor Kenneth Klein, council members Bud Federoff, John Wariak, Tessa Spletzer, Christopher Granchi, and Julie Stemper of the village of Newton Falls, Ohio, and on behalf of the officials, employees, and citizens of the village, hereby congratulate Mr. Harnacher on his retirement and thank him for his 33 3/4 years of service to the community. In testimony whereof community, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the village of Newton Falls to affix this 3rd day of August 2022. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Granchi and Mrs. Stemper. Any discussion?
Yes, Mayor Rappaport.
Sure.
Mr. Hunter, are you?
Yes, that,
It's you. Basically the same thing I said to Harry last week. I know any kind of maintenance job is a very unthankful job. Like I said, I've been doing it my entire life. I get it. People only care when it's screwed up. They don't care when everything's running great and you're doing everything you're supposed to. So you may have felt forgotten at times. I know I have, and just know that at least for me, I always remember the guys out there making everything work in the background, and I thank you for your time serving our community.
anybody else?
Thank you so much.
Anybody else?
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I've known Mike since, he makes me feel old, him retired. I remember when he started, of course, I remember his dad. And Mike has always been there, no matter what the weather was, just like his dad. If there was something that needed done, they were there to do it. And I wish you the best in your retirement. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Mr. Harder, congratulations and thank you for all of your years of service. You'll be missed.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else?
Yes, Mike.
Godspeed and a safe and long retirement. Good luck.
Thank you.
Mike, I just want to thank you for your many years of service. 33 is above and beyond the call of duty. I commend you for all of your dedication and commitment to this community. We can't thank you enough, and I want you to know you will be missed.
Thank you again.
Yeah, I can't tell you, Councilman. You know, I wanted to pretty much reiterate everything that anybody else has said, Mike. And the fact of my own personal thing, one thing I can always remember of Mike, well, I don't know why Mike was always the one behind the truck and Richie got to drive the truck. But I remember a couple years ago, we had a ceremony or whatever you want to call it at the Robbie Lee's. And I was supposed to give the key to the city to somebody I never even heard of. I don't know who the guy was. I'm not going to insult or anything like that. And I was telling Mike, I said, man, if I were going to key to the city, I'd be giving it to you. You know, he's one of the individuals that, because of him, so many good things take place. You know, for instance, you know, my son played basketball in every other school in this area. They didn't have their games one night because of snow. We got nailed with snow in the night. But because of Mike Hornacher, my boy and the rest of the boys got to play basketball that night, and they appreciated it so much. And that was the kind of guy he was, you know, anything that we needed. And this might not be the key to the city, but it's the best we have. And so if you want to come up, I'd like to get a picture with you. I'd be honored to, with the rest of the council.
Should we vote first?
Sure. Anybody gonna vote no? Call for the roll.
Mr. Cardiac,
Yes.
Ms. Spencer,
Yes.
Mr. Granchi,
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert,
Yes.
Mr. Federal.
Yes.
The record passes. Yeah, right here. Again, if you don't mind, if you use my phone so I can stick it around. That's fine, I'm gonna put it right in, so we're just going.
Oops.
How are we going to do this?
You want to get in here? Come on.
He's in the back.
Or yeah, get in a little close.
Excuse me.
Mr. Federer?
Is that it?
Do
Would you get another, do you want another picture?
Do you
I got you. I got you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I always forget the voting part, you know? Okay, here, a motion to require groups to utilize the village hall to allow access to the council chambers for all the village council committee, commissions, and board meetings. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, Mayor Manafort.
You have the floor.
Yeah, I just did this motion for the simple reason that there's been meetings I've gone to, such as civil service, that have taken place between the dividers and village chambers, or council chambers rather. It doesn't make any sense. We can't just turn the key. Let the appointed commissions and boards and committees use the same chambers just as planning and zoning does, just as Parks and Recs does. This just makes sense and just something that I wanted to do to make sure that all of our committees, commissions, and boards are done in a professional manner.
Anybody else? Mr. Moran?
I have a question for the law director and for Mr. Branchi. We let everybody in here, and there's not any police protection or watching what's going on, if things get stolen or anything. Is there any, could that happen? I don't think all the committees have police protection like we do tonight. Anything's missing, sound equipment or anything, what do we do?
These are our boards and commissions, and they're appointed by council to serve the community, so I think we need to trust those people.
What is your position on it, Mr. Brown?
I have no problem with the
No
resolution,
problem with it.
the motion, sorry.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes, I would like to address, for instance, yesterday, we were here voting, and you had to enter the side doors to come in, so, you know, I see that there could possibly be like a conflict with passing this and then having other activities being utilized out in the other section. So I didn't know, you know, what to do in cases of conflict. You know, I know voting typically would normally only happen twice a year. This was an extreme, you know, situation yesterday, but yesterday there should have been a planning and zoning meeting, and there was voting that was taking place.
Are you through?
Okay.
Yeah, you have the floor.
I understand that concern, Mrs. Fletcher, but to kind of piggyback on that, who's scheduling all of this? Do we have a master schedule of who is in and out of this building? I mean, like, those things don't just randomly get done, they should be scheduled in on the book somewhere, so there shouldn't be a conflict.
Usage of the hall, there is a master calendar.
And it used to go to the building too, I would think, like, we can't just, whoever decides to come in, and that comes in, so who's ever scheduling that, we have to ensure that we don't have a conflict.
Mayor, if I could say something. In my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Granchi, is, you know, not that those events can't take place while those meetings, but they just can't really interfere with the meetings, and people need access to get in here, so that there's a, you know, a walking area where you can actually get around them without disrupting that.
Yes, that's the entire.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually my entire point behind this. When there are activities like voting or yoga or scope or anything like that, that we don't have to close those dividers and either our boards and commissions and committees be interrupted by what they're doing, or us interrupt them by what we're doing, because we have to have these meetings between the dividers and the council chambers. It just makes infinitely more sense to just treat all of our committees, commissions, and boards the same way, and just give them access to council chambers and let them conduct their meetings professionally. The additional events are the exact reason why I wanted to make this motion.
Okay, Mr. Federoff, sorry I leave the frog. Yeah, that's our first address on it.
Yeah, I agree that we should have a place for the committees and such to meet, you know, where they do represent the city. On the same line, I can't see opening up the village hall without some type of security, some type of responsibility. I even thought it was for, okay, each council person is assigned to committees. Council person has a key flashlight thing to get into the building, okay? I don't know if council wants to be responsible for their particular committee, because as of right now, we don't have anyone that's designated to be at these meetings, to let them in. It's not like we have a secretary paid by the city to do all this stuff. I think it's too much of a risk at this point to just open up the hall without some type of a restriction to control the activities in the hall. We've got too much money invested in it. We don't have that much money left to pay for other people to come in and ride herd on it.
Ms. Miles, did you have something on that?
I just want to clarify some things. We have shut down
We suspend council.
future renting of this place temporarily. We have ran into problems because of special meetings which aren't on regular days, and something else may already have been scheduled. And then we had some issues with damage to the hall. And currently, what we're making when we do rent it out really doesn't pay the cost for the heating, the electric, and everything. It's very cheap. And so right now, if it's already been scheduled, it's scheduled, but we're not adding any new ones because we did run into problems more than one time by a conflict that when you or any of the other boards or commissions schedule special meetings, those are on short notice. They're not on your regular days. And if something else is scheduled, then that's the way it is now. So Pam temporarily suspended those. We were going to bring something to council so we could figure out the proper way to do this, the correct charges to do, whether or not we should not rent it out at all during the week and only do it on weekends. That way, if any committee, board, or the council needs to schedule a special meeting, an emergency meeting, hold a town hall, or do that, then the space would be available. So that's kind of been up in the air right now, and we've been trying to resolve it in some way. And you're right, we don't have any private security here. And when someone rents it, they just rent it, they get a fob, they come in, and they hold their event, and then they leave. We do hold a deposit, and we have taken deposits, but the deposit we charge is really too small to cover any substantial damage. We've had the oven left on over the weekend and scope discover it. So this is a problem we've been internally trying to address and figure out how to handle it, and whether or not, like I said, we should just maybe discontinue renting it out during the week to make it available to council and the boards and the various commissions that need, and in the conflict that way, and just rent it out on the weekends.
Mayor, may I have a second, Chris?
Yeah. Yeah, you already used to.
I asked if I could respond to
Okay.
Brian.
All right, go ahead.
Last time. I think we're not on the same page with this. I'm not saying that we should open the entire village hall, or I would have said village hall, that's why I said village council chambers. This is for committees and boards and commissions that are already meeting here anyway, and end up having to be between the dividers and council chambers. This isn't just opening it up willy-nilly, making every council person a security guard. It's not that. It's saying that when we have things like voting, and if there were to be a zoning meeting yesterday, then zoning would have been able to use this council chambers as they always do. Or last time, when I was here, they were doing yoga outside there, on the other side of the dividers, and we had to do the civil service meeting between those two. It is literally just to give these chambers access the access to these chambers rather, to our appointed committees, commissions, and boards. This isn't just opening it up whenever. This isn't anything like that. It's just so that we can utilize village council chambers for our appointed committees, commissions, and boards.
That's what I
all
thought.
this is.
I thought I was missing something that.
Yes.
That it's not about having other events out there,
No.
but it's during a time that whatever is going on out there, that if there's a committee meeting, they're still able to enter into here. Work
Correct.
their way around politely or whatever.
Correct. They were going to be in Village Hall anyway.
Okay, Mr. Mario, do you want to second address?
I'm not against letting the boards come in here. We haven't had, the only time we had an issue was when I think our ex-zoning man was supposed to book people in here, and then we got 2 booked and 1 booked, and then it was, you know, we didn't have the proper procedure to book. Now, I'm not against letting people in here, but what's wrong with the way we can have it scheduled? Mrs. Smiles, and then we can work it out, and we don't have it where, in other words, some day somebody comes and says, we're in here. You know, we're in here. If we pass, why do we have to pass an ordinance where we tie our own hands to run and regulate this? No one's ever said that they can't come in here, when as long as it's scheduled right, and we can work it out, or we can have one. You know, we've had 2 or 3 times when it didn't work out right. When the blood was drawn, and then another time when, you know, we had to stand on our hands. Council, you know, I mean, I just think it's unnecessary.
Okay, any, Spencer, Stemper, Federoff, second
I
address.
have a second. A couple things. I have been on numerous committees and boards, and none of them have had Bruce present. I think that's a good point. Second, if somebody's gonna come up to the podium and speak, we need to suspend council rules for the next time. I don't think that's proper procedure. And third, if we're saying he's going to steal things and we don't trust him and worry about him building, you know, beating up the building, those are our committees, our commissions, our community people that have stepped up to do things. I think that's an insult.
Okay, anything else? Okay, Ms. Spencer or Mr. Federoff, did you have any on this?
One thing I have to disagree, it's not an insult, they are people appointed by the commission, provided the council to perform a specific duty. Our problem right now is being able to provide a place for them to meet, not only for their ability to function, but also to take care of the rest of the village too. The whole village has the responsibility for this. Personally, think it's an administrative duty, and it's something as simple as scheduling a meeting, and if they're not scheduled, then they don't get it. I don't care if it is a board, it's gotta be scheduled. We've already set the scheduled board meeting, different boards and commissions, so this should not be a problem. Anyone else they would have to schedule with the administration, and we'll go from there.
Ms. Spencer, did you have?
Yes, I will piggyback on what Mr. Federoff had to say. You know, the planning and zoning is supposed to meet the first Tuesday of the month, and Park and Recs is supposed to meet the third Tuesday of the month. So those are the only 2 commissions or boards that have like a regular set schedule. As far as like civil service, it's a as needed type occurrence. So, you know, that's the one where it usually ends up being a shorter notice, you know, because there is that not that predictable, you know, schedule for that meeting. And in the case of like the voting situation, pulling that divider would have not have been an option yesterday because we walked in the side doors and then we voted in the bigger part of the room. So pulling the divider so that a board or commission could come in here and hold their meeting wouldn't have been an option.
That's the plan.
understand.
They wouldn't have been able to have their meeting out there, so this would give them access.
Okay, are you ready to call for the roll, Mr. Clerk?
Yes. Mrs. Stemper,
Yes.
Mr. Federoff,
No,
Mr. Barriak,
No,
Ms. Spletzer,
No,
Mr. Granchi.
Yes.
Okay, motion fails. Okay, resolution 36-2022, whenever the clerk is ready to read.
thirty-six 22, sir.
Resolution 36-2022. A resolution declaring it necessary to levy a 4 mil 5-year police tax levy and directing the Trumbull County Board of Elections to place the within 4 mil 5-year additional tax levy for police purposes on the November 8, 2022 general election ballot.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
second.
Mr. Boyak made the motion. Yeah, Mr. Federoff seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, not that before, please.
Mr. Boyak, you have the floor.
What I want to tell the people tonight, I want to give you a little something. First, there is such a thing as freedom of speech, and I've never in my life wanted anybody not to have freedom of speech. But some people use the guise of freedom of speech as a bully pulpit to bully and intimidate their way into being like a patriarch to a clan or tribe. I haven't heard of anybody, and I get around all day, not want to have the right to vote on this. That's what it's about. It's not about the tax right now. It's about giving them the opportunity. And there was a time when one of the people that spoke tonight got sued because he wanted to have the ability to vote, and they denied him the right to vote. So the other reason is mutual aid, what the taxes are and all that. Really, it's 40 cents, $4 a thousand, 40 cents a hundred, $4 a thousand, $40 for 10,000. So it's a couple $100. There's not very many houses, and this is not appraised value. This is tax value on the home. I think that the people in this community have the right to speak, whether they want to worry about whether the sheriff's going to get there, whether he's out in Kinsman or not, whether they're getting broke into. And if they don't want to pay the money, just let them go down to the ballot box and say, hey, we don't want to pay it. And they have spoken, they have had their say, and then I'm not going to have to be held back to say, I didn't give you the right to speak. This is democracy.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Federoff?
I did quite a bit of research on this because I do have a history of not wanting additional taxes. Looking into this, it's not a case of additional taxes. It really boils down to, if you want to have a village. Because what we're getting into is, we had a grant cut that funded the police department before. It's no longer there. So we've got to find more money. 4 mills will bring us up to where we are right now. 3-man police department. A 3-man police department, that's what we got. If we don't do something, let's say that this does go before this passes tonight, and it goes before the people out there, the taxpayers, you and them. It's not the council's responsibility, it will be the people of New Falls, the citizens. Do you want a village? Do you want a police department? You say, oh no, I don't need the police right now. Okay, if this ever reaches the point, which this I'm not saying the state's gonna come in or nothing like that, but what we're gonna have to do exactly what the state would do, is cut essential services. And you're not gonna like it. You're gonna start cutting because if we have a police department, we can't go any lower than we are now. If we will remain a village, we're gonna have to have a quote police department. 4 mills is the cheapest you can get. I'll be honest with you, I said 6. That way we can show the people what we did. At least they'd have something to see. If you pass this 4 mill levy, all you're gonna see is those 3-man police departments. And as far as getting the sheriff in here, the sheriff is 18 men short. They're looking at hours and days for a response. I worked for Portage County Sheriff Department, and we were in the same position. You have one man working north and the other working south. You ain't gonna get somebody, hey, kids are breaking windows or going through my cars or something like that. There's nobody to come in. And I get a lot of, like I say, I talk to a lot of people. And quite frankly, we can't afford not to have a police department, because we will have one, whether this passes or not. And all this is putting it on the ballot to let you, the citizen taxpayer, make the decision. Like you, everyone out there, we pay taxes too. But for us to sit up here and say, yes, we're gonna pass this ordinance, hitting the levy on you with no input, no, this is gonna be, you're the one with the investment in your home. It's your family out there. And if there's no police department, it's gonna be your choice as to whether you want a police department. And this is really where we're at. The levy is all going into the police department. You look at it, and that's where it's going. Nobody's getting vacation or anything like that. I don't know. Like I said, I've researched it. The very best we can come out with this 4 mill is keeping where we're at. It's that to depend on the sheriff, who can't take care of their home right now. They're short. It's going to be up to the taxpayers before we go from here. All this does is let the taxpayer make a choice. Thank you.
Anybody else want to first address?
Yes, I would like to address. I do want to make sure that people understand that it is based on the assessed, I'm sorry, let me back up and start with, it does say that it is 40 cents for each $100 of valuation. And what I've been given in the past as a generic way to figure things out is if a house has a fair market value of $100,000, that would amount to $140 a year.
400.
You guys can't, polish back and forth.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, there's a difference between the fair market value of a house and the assessed value. We pay taxes on 35% of the fair market value of our homes. So I just need to make sure that we're not using the wrong numbers, because people are getting things confused between appraised value, market value, assessed value. There's a lot of language that goes into this, but really at the end of the day, what it boils down to is, like Mr. Fedorov said, do you want a community? Do you want a police force? And that is up to the voters to decide.
Ms. Stemper.
I've received lots of calls on this for over the past few months, and when it was on the agenda, I had quite a few over the weekend. I put an email out on June 7th asking for information that I think would have been absolutely necessary to know and to have and to share before I would go out and ask anybody for a penny. For 1 penny. I've gotten some of that information. I sat for 2 weeks waiting for a response. I sent an email, and I got a response saying on June 21st it was sent to the police department to get my information. Police chief hasn't responded. We're sitting here with a levy to be put on a ballot. We don't have our administrator, we don't have the police department here to answer questions for us. I have emails from almost 2 months ago that I don't have all the information for. I'm gonna piggyback Mr. Federoff here. He stated about a grant that we lost. We didn't find out yesterday this grant was going away. One question I asked on my email was how many grants have we applied for? I know the fire department, the EMS, they live on grants. So does the police department. Do you know how many we've applied for? None. None.
Okay, is that all you have, Ms. Milford?
For now, yes.
Well, a second. Mr. Granchi, would you like to first address?
Yes, please. Just piggybacking off of Mrs. Stemper, the biggest thing that I've been getting from my constituents that I've spoken to was that there have been no grants applied for, and how could the police department ask us to help them when they haven't tried to help themselves? And I have a hard time disagreeing with that. The people are also worried about reallocations. I understand that the money that would be made from a levy would be earmarked for the police. Fully understand that. However, the amount that is previously allocated from the budget to the police department could be reduced by that same amount, and that would be their same operating amount. Although the money that was earmarked for the police department is still going to the police department, it could be moved to the general fund. Now, I'm working on legislation to basically circumvent needing the trust to do it, where there's actual legislation in place that would require that money, at least a majority of that money, to not be moved. It's a little bit complicated because budgets ebb and flow, but Mr. Bryan and I are working on that. So I'm trying to do what I can to make this work for the people that I swore to represent. Regardless of my feelings on the police department, I said in my appointment interview that even if I don't agree with something, if my constituents want it, I am nothing but a representative. I just am one voice for their collective voices. I'm not an overlord. So my goal is to do what they want. I am their voice. Rather than everyone being up here at the same time, it's just me. And I've got no support. Not a single person, which surprised me because when we brought this up, I thought there would be support. I even publicly said I thought there would be support. There's no support. And it is what it is at that point. Okay.
Mr. Boyer, would you like to second address?
Well, the only thing